All right, it looks like we're live. So, hello everyone. Julia here, back with Cheryl. We just had a miscommunication about what time we were starting. So, here we are now. And Cheryl's got an awesome technique for helping people overcome fear. And Cheryl, what you were saying in that email, how about Jason doesn't really tell you how to be fearless, and Tom doesn't really give you a lot of technique either. So you're kind of picking up the slack where they left off.
Yes. When I first started looking into Tom's work, and I said, every time I have a negative emotion, that there's a fear under there. Um, I was going on the fireside chat and asking a lot of questions because I didn't know exactly how to, okay, yeah, all right, I've got all these fears, but I couldn't see all of them. I didn't know what fears that I had. It's not something you sit down and just think about, what am I afraid of? Because it's just fear and it doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable. And so I would, go and ask him specific questions, and he would answer my questions on the fireside chat. And I think that that was more specifically, related to the question I was asking at the time. But I couldn't go through Tom's videos and find that specific information because I really, really needed more detailed instructions on how exactly do you get rid of these things.
Right. Yeah. And so a lot of people are like that. They're like, lose the fear, be fearless. But there's no, like, okay, I'll lose the fear, but it doesn't work that way, right?
Right. You can't just go and say, okay, I'm going out into the world today and I'm going to be fearless. And then you don't have any more fear. That is not how it works. We have all these accumulated fears, from early childhood through your life, something happens in your experience. And, when you're a young child, you are experiencing the world through the eyes of a child without, much understanding of what's happening. And so, children, yes, there is, abuse, and there is things that the children does know something bad is happening. But the child also can do this thing where, for instance, a mother goes and gets a little toy for one of the kids. They weren't feeling good and didn't get one for both children. And then the one child that didn't get something thinks, oh, the mom doesn't love me as much as the other one. Well, that's an incorrect assumption. And, children can make these assumptions very easily because they're looking through the mind of a child. And so we can gather up all these little fears and all these little beliefs that are completely not even true. And then we can carry that throughout our life and just keep repeating that pattern, because it is the way, Tom talks about and Jason talks about, that the experience that you're getting is a reflection of what you think, what you fear, what you love, what you hate, everything. It's all a reflection of you. And this is our feedback loop that tells us how you're doing. So if you've got this feedback loop that's, you have all these things that are happening to you, those things are coming out of all of that, your fears, your beliefs, and your ego. It's all coming from there. But it's hard to discern that if you are not understanding of what's going on, because we're so embedded in this dense physical reality. We think, okay, this is just happening. Well, we don't really sit down and talk to other people about the extreme details of what's happening. And then if you go look at your life, you can just see these patterns just repeating themselves over and over again. And other people are not having that same reality. Just like when I had all those big dogs running out at me off their leash over and over again. And I can count probably 15 or so times that happened. And I asked my partner, I said, when you go outside, are you seeing any big dogs that are not on their leashes and that are running towards you? and scaring you? And he said, no. And so I'm thinking, why is this happening to me so many times? It's because it was reflecting my fear of, a big dog coming out and biting me. And it's just, we're not real aware of what's going on until you really start questioning what's happening in your life. That life isn't just a random event, and you can look at your life and see the patterns that are repeating, but it takes introspection and looking at what's happening and noticing what's happening to see these events. And that's one of the things that I found as I looked closer. I was like, oh, that pattern keeps happening because of this incident I had over here, 20 years ago, with someone, and I had the incorrect assumption that something else was happening when it wasn't even about me. It was about the other person and something they were dealing with. It had nothing to do with me. And over time, as I looked through, some of the bigger patterns that were in my life, I could completely see the pattern. I saw where it, and then I traced it back to where it was coming from. And I went in and I rearranged that belief that I had around it, and the thing would quit happening. And, that's when I really noticed, okay, what I'm doing around this is changing my reality in a big way. And I haven't had a big dog run out towards me since, not one. So it stopped those things happening. And so I started just trying to look at my reality, just like you do when you're putting on that goggle screen to go into a virtual reality. You put that goggle on, and then you're looking out there and you've got this reality. I see this reality that I live in every day the same way. I get up in the morning. When I wake up, it's like I'm reaching over and putting the goggle on, and then I'm looking out into this reality that's a reflection of what's going on in the innerverse, on the inside of my mind. And I that's how I started really noticing the changes. And if you look at physics and everything else they've been going on, they can't even find the reality. It's all empty space. So it is a very difficult jump to go from being the dense being in this physical reality to come into the realization that you are consciousness, and that consciousness is primary. And we've always heard that saying, mind over matter. Well, I am pretty sure from my experiences here that it's all mind over matter. We are consciousness here. We are not here of this world. We're just passing through it, learning what we can. And I think that's what happens when we take things in such a literal way, that, oh, this is what's happening and going on in the world, when it's not even real. And I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think that the larger consciousness system that we're all part of, I don't think it cares two rips about the virtual reality part of it. I think it sees it as ones and zeros. I think it sees our avatars as ones and zeros. So it really doesn't care what happens to the avatars. It doesn't care what happens here. It knows it's not real. And when something is approaching something, well, that's not real. Well, it's not going to get, all involved in that, because it's not too smart, because it's not even a real thing. But what it is concerned with is the consciousness that is here, and all the parts of the consciousness that we all belong to. It completely cares about that, because I can look at some of the experiences that I had in my life, and I felt that some of them were kind of pieced together to help me. It's all been to help me see what I was doing here, and see how I was destroying and suffering and causing my own pain. I was doing it to myself. And without the virtual reality that I've been in, I would have never learned those things. So that's why I have the beliefs that I do, is not just from what I've learned and what I've heard or seen in other people. I have the viewpoint that I have from my direct experience here. And over the last 50, I'm almost 60, so I've seen a lot, and I've experimented a lot here. I'll try something and see what that does, So I've had a lot of experiences that point in this direction, because I had the same, feelings and thoughts about suffering here. And so, why is this as it is? Why do people have to suffer here? This is just horrible. And then as I thought about it deeper, it's like, well, wait a minute, what if it's not even real? So it seems real as we're going through this life, seems very real. But if it isn't real, and it really is true that we're consciousness, then what we perceive as suffering is not really suffering at all. It is just data. It's just information of what, it's not consciousness. I can see how the system, the larger consciousness system, would see it as not a problem because it's not real. It's just ones and zeros over there on a piece of paper. And then it sees, the deep, understanding and learning the spiritual laws here and the growth and the evolution of your consciousness as primary. And that's just what it seems to me, that is primary. That's what it focuses on. And, I think that for me, I needed some of those harsh lessons, or I would have continued on the way I was doing and maintained the same, loops that I was in of suffering that I was actually doing to myself. I had a lot of baggage here and I packed it. And yes, some of those lessons that I had were harsh. They stung a bit. But because of those harsh lessons I had, I am no longer the being that I started out being here. I'm different. I'm changed. I don't approach people the same way. I don't treat them how I used to treat them. Everything about my life changed. And, I can't get outside of the system to see what the system is, just as nobody else can either. But from everything that I've seen over all these years I've been here, it is pointing in that direction, that consciousness is primary. And what happens here is ones and zeros. I'm not negating anybody's pain. I understand there's pain here. I've been through it. I get that. I mean, it doesn't mean that there are no victims. Yes, things happen to people. But it's when we take on a victim mentality and we believe ourselves to be a victim in general, that's where you can really get yourself in trouble, believing that, because then this system that we interact with, it's feeding you back your beliefs and your all of that. And so if you believe yourself to be a victim, well, this medium that we live in is going to make it so. And then you're going to create more things that are going to happen to you because you're a victim. But if you are just someone that things have happened to, and yes, it was very harsh and it was not fun and it was uncomfortable, and those things that I needed that to understand, my place here and what I need to do to change and evolve my consciousness. It's just the way this medium works. Then you start understanding that, yes, people, things happen to people and people are victims of crimes and things happen here. But, out of that also comes the lessons of forgiveness, being kind to others. And sometimes some of the things that happen to us is because we were, in a place where we were not being very kind either, so it is, we are here just looking right at ourselves. And it's not in a selfish way of, oh, look at me. It's I'm in a medium to where I can see, where my consciousness is at, what I know, what I don't know, what I believe, what I'm afraid of. I'm in a medium where I can see all of that about myself. And because I'm here, I now have the ability to change those things. And once I change those things, then I do not have to keep that reoccurring pattern over and over again. What do you think, Julia?
100%. Yeah. It's all about your mindset. If you have the mindset that you're a victim, you're going to live that life. If you have the mindset that you're a victor, you're going to live that life, and once you realize you actually create this reality, you have so much power to just make it exactly like you want it. But someone in the chat, Joshua, was just saying that he feels like this reality was made. Let me see exactly what he said. Multitasking here. He says it's this realm seems designed to create suffering. So what do you say to that, Cheryl?
Let's see. It's designed to create suffering. As far as consciousness goes, and it's, the medium that we evolve in, be as very young consciousnesses are, they tend to be more fear-based, and this reality, I would agree with him in a way. We had how could we learn and grow if we didn't have the struggle? So in a way, yes, I do agree that it can, it does create some of it, but once you learn what's going on and that you're creating more of it, right, then you just pass through it. Those things no longer affect you anymore. And, when I look out into the world, we all, interact with this simulation. And if it didn't have some of the things in it that it does have, we would not be able to move from where we are out of this fear state. I think we bring to it. Well, there's the other part of it too, where if you have a whole collective consciousness that is in a negative, fearful vibe, I think that's going to create a negative, fearful simulation too. So I think there's several different ways to look at it. I think that, the collective consciousness does have, sway here, which is, one of the things Jason talks about is break free or die trying, because you really do need to break free from the fearful collective. And if you look at it, most of humanity is fear-based. So look at what they're creating. So maybe I don't think that. I think it's the consciousness here that's creating this reality. So I don't think it's really, it may not be, but okay, I have to retract that. It may not be that. I don't think it's based in, it's created to specifically cause, us harm here. I think that it's us causing our own harm here. I think that if the collective consciousness was, instead of being inward and self-focused and fearful and fear-based, if it was outward focusing and it was about caring and it was about loving others and it was about instead of conflict and instead about cooperation instead of competition, instead of competing with each other. Oh, I don't have enough, so I'm just going to take yours, because that's based in fear. That's self-focused and it's about you. But if it's other based and it's about love, this would be a completely different virtual reality. So we've got a collective consciousness that is fear-based, and that's what's creating. And that's why I think it's making it such a harsh place.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And yeah, we could totally turn it around. And Tom Campbell always talks about being in other reality streams where it's worse than this one and much better too. And we can get to that point where it doesn't take adversity to learn our hard lessons, and
Right.
I think that's one of those things. And it is just kind of set up like that because of the collective being so fear-based and scarcity-based. But at the same time, there's growth to be had. And sometimes, it's hard to appreciate the sunshine without the rain, the dark, the light without the dark, things like that, that contrast. And so we have these really extreme lessons here. But like we said, it all goes back to it's all zeros and ones. And even though that pain and suffering feels really real when you're going through it, when you do get past it, it's like it wasn't really there anyway, so you really get that kind of feel like, oh, okay, it isn't real, because when I look back at that, I don't feel that pain anymore. It doesn't last forever, and it's
Right.
lessons to be learned. And yeah, but it
Yes.
is tricky because the collective is just on such a negative resonance and that whole fear and scarcity mindset, instead of the cooperation and compassion and caring and sharing with each other. And that's what we got to get back to. We have to get back to that. And some people are doing that, and I think more and more. So that's real optimistic that we're headed that way.
Well, and if you think about it, I was thinking about, the past, 2, 3 years, and how, the collective went even a little deeper into fear, and, everybody just got super miserable and really upset. And, if you think about it, the last, 3, 4 months, I've noticed a lot of people was getting tired of that, running around with your hair on fire. We're all going to die. And it was just panic ridden. And I think that a lot of people just got tired of that and tired of feeling that way every day. And I think that maybe those experiences of the last few years maybe taught a few people, it's like, wait a minute, if I live my life every day like this is just making the situation worse. I am part of the problem. I'm not part of the solution. And this is just making it worse. So they get tired of it. And so they have to face a little bit of that fear within themselves, the fear of death, the fear of the unknown. We don't know what's happening here. And, and it just had so many lessons in it on so many different levels. Could you say that all that was bad? I could look at it and go, well, in a way, it's causing some people to, kind of wake up to the fact that they're part of the problem and they're not helping, and going and telling everybody, that we all need to be really scared here, instead of telling them, well, if we're not scared of this and we take care of ourselves and we take care of our diet and we keep our immune system well, we don't have to be afraid, because everything really is all right, because you're still 6 feet above the ground. Yeah, you may have had, people around you that didn't do so well, but again, it's ones and zeros so that we can learn and grow up. And and Tom has spoken about other systems in, this VR reality, that they are more grown up and they don't have these problems. They have grown, and then they go into other, virtual realities to help those younger consciousnesses grow past this fear thing. And I think once the consciousnesses grow past the fear thing, they don't suffer anymore, because there's no fear. They don't have a fear of death. They know that death isn't even real, that they're an immortal being. They know they don't die. They know that they don't, that these things that they were afraid of before they got rid of their fear, that's not really happening to them anymore. And then once you do, have your transition experience, then you're just moving on to the next life with your avatar, to either come back in as a teacher, or come back in to learn, the rest of what you need to about your fear. I think that because, where we live is such a challenge, that must mean that we must be up for it, right?
Right. This is an advanced class that we're in this reality stream. So
And Tom calls, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Tom calls it what?
Tom calls this reality the fast track. And,
Right.
if you think about it, in one lifetime,
Entropy reduction trainer, right? Entropy
right,
reduction trainer.
right. And if it's a fast track, and that's really what's going on here, well, it's not going to make it easy. We're at a kind of a challenger level, and this is how we can grow and evolve even faster, which one, we're part of the system, so that when we evolve and grow and we change ourselves, it then in turn changes the whole system. That's why, when, a lot of consciousnesses group up together, and then they put their minds and their consciousnesses together, they can make huge changes in this realm, because, one mind is better than two. I'm sorry, that I said that backwards. Two minds are better than one. So you group up, then you can even evolve even faster here. And so there's so many different ways that you can, speed it up. And from where I'm standing, I would want to speed it up because, the first 20, 30 years of my life, I was doing the suffering thing. So it's almost like, okay, let's hurry up. Let me make my life as hard as I can so I can go ahead and get past that and then be done with it. I mean, really, that's logical. That would make sense instead of saying, oh, well, why don't I spread this pain out over the next, 4 lifetimes? Then you've got 4 more lifetimes of pain when you can just go ahead and get it over with. It's kind of like, let's go ahead and just rip the Band-Aid off. What do you
Right. And
think?
we probably do have a say in, how challenging it's going to be in that transition point, that none of us remember. But
Right.
it's very likely that we pick, these challenging courses so we could, make the goals that we want to make and get to the point we want to get to, so we can graduate to the next level of, yeah.
Right. So if it's not real, right? And it's like, it's just ones and zeros. It's just like writing down something on a piece of paper. Well, then, yeah, it's like, okay, well, let's go ahead and, all right, I'm going to be a marathon runner and I'm going to be in a car accident where one of my foot gets lopped off, right? So, so then look at all the challenges that's going to set up for you, right? And then that's going to force you to look at things in a deeper way because you've got a lot of things to work through and understand, and you're going to grow a lot more than if you just come in and you're the best, marathon runner on the planet. Well, that's going to just kind of feed the ego a little bit, and oh, look how great I am. When the other scenario of, losing a foot, and you can't do it, well, that's going to teach you way more than, just being the best at everything you do. So and what's interesting is I've seen a lot of stories like that where there was one famous story about a football player who had done all the work, got all the way through high school. He started in his career in the NFL, and he was just set to be one of the world's best players. And about, he got this $1 million contract, and then the first year in, he was in a car accident and was almost killed. He was on the Oprah Winfrey Show or a couple other places, and for the first 2 years, it took him 2 years just to recover a little bit from it. But then afterwards, after it was all said and done, he said, I'm kind of glad things worked out the way it did because I was a horrible person. He said, I like who I am now and I can live with myself. I didn't like who I was before. I was selfish. I was mean to other people. I wasn't kind. I was ugly. I was not anybody I could like, and he said, I just hated myself anyway. He said, I didn't feel good. Yes, I had an athlete's body and I could do all these, incredible things with my physicalness. He said, but the inward man, who I was as a person, was just terrible. He said, so now that I'm looking back at my life, I welcomed what happened because I like who I am now. I'm not that person anymore. And when you really look, at other people's stories, you can see that type of story over and over and over again. And it looks like this is a place you can come and set yourself up for a fall so that you can fall all the way down, bump your head really hard, and then wake up and go, oh, wait a minute. This isn't about what's going on out in this reality. This is about what's going on inside of me. And then you change that inside of you and you become someone who cares about others, who loves other people. Then you go out and give that to the other people around you and watch how your reality changes. Your reality changes from one where you're taking advantage, you're not a good person, to one where other people are coming to you. They love you. You can see it in their eyes. And you're welcomed, here instead of, having rocks thrown at you everywhere you go because you're just terrible, right?
Yeah, it makes for great growing opportunities. So
Right.
you want to get into your bracelet strategy a bit
Which strategy?
for when you find yourself in a fear situation, you're with your bracelets, your bracelet
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
overcome.
And so the first thing that you can do is when you're out in your reality and you've planned a good day for yourself, you get up, and this is the thing about doing fear work is if it's not done in the moment when it's happening, what you're doing is you're just thinking about it, and you need to feel around it, because when you're just thinking about it, that doesn't go all the way into the being level. You've got to get this into yourself in a very deep way, and the only way to approach that is to approach it in the moment while it's happening. That's where you really have the control of diminishing these fear bubbles that you've got. So you go out into your day, you get into your car. This is just an example. You get into your car, you go to start your car and it won't start. And then you get mad. Now you're mad. You're mad now. So as you're sitting there and then you feel that negative emotion, you feel that sting and you're just cussing it up. And then you sit there and you go, well, wait a minute. Okay, this is a mechanical thing. Things happen to these mechanical things sometimes, and they do things that I haven't planned. What you would do as soon as you feel that sting and say, okay, well, wait a minute. This is just a car. Why am I upset? Why am I upset about it? Yeah, yeah, I've got to do more things now. Now I've got to go get a set of jumper cables and then ask somebody to come jump my car off. I've got to do a couple things, but I'm still going to be able to get my car going 9 times out of 10. And if not, it can go to the shop and get fixed, and then it'll go the next day or 2 days or 3 days later. So why am I really mad? Why am I really mad about this thing? And then you just keep going. And then you'll start going, oh, wait, I remember one time my car didn't start and I didn't get to my job on time and I got fired. And, and so you can trace it back and you just keep going. Okay, well, maybe I got fired because I was late because my car wouldn't start. Well, what else is in here? Why else would I get mad because the car didn't start? Because it's really not that big a deal, because it's just ones and zeros. Why am I mad because this car doesn't start? Then you get even deeper into it and it says, oh, wait a minute. I'm afraid that if I don't, do every single thing exactly the way I need to do it, or way that it's going to upset someone else. Oh, wait, I get really upset when someone gets mad at me. Oh, I'm afraid of people getting mad at me. Then you keep tracing that back. Well, why are you afraid if someone gets mad at you? Because, if someone gets mad at you, that's really not about you anyway. That's about them and their problems, because you're not part of the problem until you jump in there with it. Then you become part of the problem. So why are you really, doing this? Oh, you're afraid of what other people think. Oh, well, that's really about the other person. If they're an ugly person, well, they think bad things about everybody. and they're going to think bad things about you, because 9 times out of 10, you could, if you're on your way to work and your car won't start, you can call your supervisor, boss, or say, oh, my car won't start this morning, but I'm correcting the glitch as we speak, and I will be in as soon as I get this problem resolved. And if I can't resolve it, we have Uber now, so I'll just Uber in and find a way to get there. And the boss would completely understand that, because they also know that cars break sometimes and these things happen. Now, if you're doing this once a week, well, then that boss is going to say, well, you're just not reliable. And then they're going to think other things. But if you are reliable, then your boss is going to say, oh, whoopsie, car glitch. And then it can turn into, a funny thing. Yeah, oh, put the key in the car and here we are. It went nowhere. And you can approach it that way. But as you go deeper and deeper into why am I upset because my car didn't start, then you go to the next thing of, oh, I am afraid of what other people are going to think, or I am afraid that someone's going to get mad at me. And I really don't like it when someone gets mad at me, because that doesn't feel good. And then that fear will keep on taking you back, and it'll take you on back to, oh, I care about what others think about me. I need them to think good thoughts about me, because I am really feeling inadequate. Like, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing good enough here. And I'm really just beating myself up. So really what the fear is the fear of not being good enough. It has nothing to do with the car. It has nothing to do with it not starting, has nothing to do with the boss or anybody else that's getting mad at you. It has to do with how you feel about yourself. And that's how, you can start working on these fears. But, like I said, it has to be done in the moment when it's happening. It doesn't work really well to just think about it, because thinking, you're just in your left, into, logical mind and rationality. You're not in the deeper levels of yourself, where all of the fear, love, and all those things reside. So as you're trying to get rid of fear, you want to get, tap into the way you're feeling. And I think a large majority of us, me included, I had to work through this one, is, the fear of not being good enough. And I think some of that comes from, early life, especially, here in the South where I'm from, it's very, very religious. And there is a doctrine of spare the rod, spoil the child, and the children get in trouble when they make mistakes. And then the children, they get fearful of making mistakes, and because they get punishment instead of, understanding, because when a child makes a mistake, they're going to make mistakes because they're children. They don't know any better. And the only way they really learn those things is not through punishment. How they learn that is through consequences. When you look out and go, oh, look, the kid just threw a rock and killed the television set with it, in the house. Well, then they made a mistake, and the kid is, I didn't mean to do it. Well, if you grab them and attack them, that's just going to scare them, about making mistakes. And instead, if you approach it in a kind, caring, loving way, then you approach the situation. It's like, oh, you just broke the television. Well, I guess you don't get to watch TV here until we can, till your parents can, get the money together and get another one. So why don't you go ahead and come around here and help me? We got to take this TV out to the dumpster and throw it away, because we don't have a TV anymore. And through that one experience, that child could learn, and it would never throw a rock in the house again, because it didn't like going all week without getting to watch its cartoons and doing the things that it likes to do. That's how a child really learns lessons, is through the consequences of their behavior. And I think that, I'm not saying anything bad about religion or anything. It's just how they are. I think that in some of the concepts around how people learn and how people grow, is punishment is not a great teacher, from my personal opinion, because it causes more fear. And then as these children that grew up in this way get out in life, well, they are afraid of making mistakes. And then that's the thing about it. We are going to make mistakes. I make mistakes still too, and I'm still learning and growing in a lot of different areas. But I had to learn to not be afraid to make mistakes. That's the only way I can learn and learn about other things. I have to make mistakes. Then I look at the mistake I made and go, okay, how did I do that? How did I get into that? What caused that to happen? How can I do it better next time? How can I, learn and grow from this? Not, I need to be punished and I need to pay for it because, I've done something wrong. I think that, that punishment is just not a good way to teach people. Now I'm talking about people and children out in society, not about the whole thing. But I think that as you go deeper into the fears and start working on how this is affecting your reality, you will find that these fears that are underneath all of it are causing all of it. Because if you have these fears, say for instance, you know, your car didn't start, you go there, your boss gets mad, then you're going to keep having the car that won't start because you're afraid. That fear causes that to keep happening over and over again until you get the lesson that's there. And it could be in a little different way. Well, you know, you're driving down the road and it just quits. Now you're on the side of the road. You know, another example that I have about this, and it was really interesting. This one took me a long time to see, is I was one day, all of these tractors rolled up into my front yard. I had backhoes. I had the largest jackhammer on the planet in my front yard, tearing up the concrete. My whole house was vibrating. They came and tore up the whole street in front of my house, and it wasn't anywhere else, just in front of my house where I live. And this went on for 4 weeks. And my whole house was stressed. My dogs were stressed. I was stressed to the point it was making me sick, physically sick. So I'm standing out in my yard one day. They had to come and put a piece of the sidewalk in. They put it in, and then it got damaged, and they were almost gone. They were almost done getting ready to leave. It'd been 4 weeks. They had to come back and rip the concrete out again and replace it. And that's when I knew it was one of my reflections. I said, oh Lord, what is happening here? I'm doing this. Because when they had to tear out another piece of it, it was just, you know, sending a point home to me. This is yours. Because this is getting to the point of ridiculous. And then I caught it. I felt it, and I went, oh, wait a minute. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid of road construction. Why would I be afraid of road construction? Ah, wait a minute. I worked as a home health nurse for 20 years. And this was before cell phones. I could not call somebody and tell them I'm stuck in traffic. I've got road construction and I can't get to your house. So what would happen was, and this went on for 20 years, I would get stuck in road construction. It would put me behind on my schedule. And then it would make me late to every one of my appointments the rest of the day. So by the time I got to that first appointment, I couldn't call them and tell them what's happening. That patient, they're not feeling well either. So they're kind of glitchy as it was. They would be furious. And they would open the door with eyes of rage going, you were supposed to be here 30 minutes ago. But I'd been sitting in traffic, not being able to get there. So I couldn't get mad at the people. I mean, they're already sick. They can't help it. I understood. So I instead aimed all of that anger and vented it onto road construction. I hate road construction. And then every time I got into traffic, stuck in road construction, I'm sitting there in my car fuming because I can't get to my job and I can't get there on time. And I'm going to have mad people coming at me because I also had a problem of not feeling good enough. So when I would get there, they're mad at me. Oh, bam, they're hitting two fears. Fear of road construction and fear of not being good enough. So then that would put me in a bad mood the rest of the day and ruin my whole day. My patients could feel it. They were reacting to it. It was just horrible. So after 20 years of doing that, well, that vibe of being afraid of road construction had gotten so big, I manifested it in my front yard for a month. And I'm standing there and I went, oh my goodness, that's why this is here. Oh, yeah, I can see. I was very, very angry. And I put that out into the world. Well, it's a reflection, and this is it coming right back to me. There it is. And so I stood there and I thought these thoughts instead and felt this way instead. Road construction is a good thing. I'm so glad we have all these roads to drive on. I really enjoy being able to get around this town. I enjoy being able to go visit my friends and have good times with them. I'm so glad these roads are here. Oh, and look at all these men working out here. There's 30 men that they are working here so they can support their wives and children so that they can have a roof over their head and eat. And I went out there and I said, hey guys, thank you for your service. thank you for helping keeping our roads running. They were laughing, of course. And I was changing the vibration about road construction. And I was using the logic of it. We need road construction and all of those to change that fear vibe that I had into a better vibration. And you know, when the road construction landed in my front yard, that was not the first time. That was just when I finally figured out what that was. But I'd moved, before I moved here, I was in another house. And as soon as I moved into that house, they came in, tore up the whole road that you need to get on and out of to get in and out of the neighborhood. And that road was tore up with road construction for a whole year prior to me moving out of there. And then as I got ready to move out of there, I was thinking, this darn road construction, because I hadn't figured it out yet. Boy, I just hate this road construction. There it is again. Makes me so mad. And as I'm leaving to move into the house I'm in now, where I did have the more road construction, they opened up that road the very day, not 2 days before, not 2 days after. They opened that road the day that I moved out of that house. There I am sitting behind the U-Haul truck, and they moved the cones out of the way while I was sitting there. And then I turned and was able to use this road that I just suffered through all the construction of for a year and a half. I didn't get it then. I just moved on and moved. But when the biggest jackhammer on the planet is in my front yard for a month, that it took all of that to get me to see that I still had within my being, at the being level, anger and fear around road construction. So that's just an example of how I personally was, learned how to deal with, getting my fears down and removing those fears. And that's how I did it. And I'm pretty sure, because this was just a few weeks ago, that the road construction theme in my life will greatly diminish now that I have removed this fear. And this happened with a lot of other fears. That was just one that was recent, this a couple months ago. I had the fear of the big dogs, I had big dogs running out at me everywhere. And so that's just an example of how you can get in there and look out at your reality through your reality goggles and go, what am I seeing here? And how does this have to do with something I have a fear of? Why am I upset here? What's going on? And, I think I wanted to add this from what we already talked about is, right brain people, they tend to be more emotional, and they're going to feel these negative emotions in a much bigger way. I think for the left brain people that we have with us here, they are not as emotional. They're more logical and, rational. They're more logical, rational. Then you've got the more empathic, intuitive. For the logical, rational, what they're going to need to do, because they're not going to feel this, anger in a big way like, an intuitive would. They need to look at the situation and just say, and just notice it. When did something not turn out the way I wanted it to? Or why do I keep getting this same situation? And see, they could ask themselves a different set of questions to get them to the fear that's underneath, the repeating patterns. So you can look and see what patterns are repeating itself. What do you keep getting over and over again in your life? Because that pattern is created by you. So you would want to look at those patterns and try to work it back to that fear, to be able to find the fear so that you can, and for a logical person, then they can just load in the logic of, well, wait a minute, I'm switching over to me again. Wait a minute, I'm a retired nurse. I don't even need to be at anybody's house on time. Why would I be upset at road construction? Because it really doesn't matter anymore. So they can take it in a more logical, rational approach. So I think that all the different types of people would need to approach this in, a little different way, because everybody's different. And what's going to work for one person may not work for the other. I think that, as we are all different, we all have different, takes on how your reality works. You know, if you've got the perspective of rationality and logic, you're just not going to be a super emotional person all the time. That's in the other hemisphere, on the right hemisphere. So you're not going to have all that. It doesn't mean that left logical people are uncaring and unkind and all that. It just means that they don't need a lot of emotionality in their experience. And so I think that, you know, looking at coming at it from several different ways is going to help you, you know, get to the source of the problem, which is always within us. The problem is never out there. And, you know, them coming and tearing up the whole road in front of my house, well, that wasn't a problem. You know, they had to fix the road. There was a little piece of it that was, you know, caving in the culvert that they didn't want a car to fall into. So there was nothing wrong. What was wrong was what I was thinking about it, if that makes sense. What do you think, Julia?
Yes, it makes total sense. So yeah, again, it's all perspective, and yeah, I like the way you really just dissected through there, you know, and led from one thing to the other. And how do you actually use your bracelet in situations like that?
Yes. When I first started doing fear work, what I noticed is intuitive people tend to be very good at going out of body and and going off into their imagination. What I found was when one of these big fears would show up is I would immediately just, okay, I'm out, and you know, I would just check out. So I wasn't even really there to deal with anything. And so what I found is that the bracelet would anchor me in the situation, and it had 4 beads on it, and they were different colored beads. And the first one was yellow bead. I'm sorry, the first one was a red bead to get your attention. Okay, it's red. Stop what you're doing. You're not thinking correctly here because you're wadded up in a fear. So let's stop. And then the next bead was yellow. Take 3 deep breaths to help, you know, ground you back into the physical part instead of off in your imagination, you know, in la la land. Let's come here and deal with this. It grounds you to the situation. And then there was some times where the fear was just kind of big. Then I had another metaphor I would use, and it was like a sheriff badge, right? But that's your courage badge. It's not a sheriff, it's a courage badge. And then you slap a courage badge on, because you need your courage when you're dealing with these, because dealing with fears is uncomfortable and it's scary. And that's the way they feel, because that's what it is. It's fear. That's how fear feels. So you get you a courage badge. You know, you've already been through a lot of things in life, and you can do this too. You know, there's not a saber-toothed tiger standing there fixing to eat your leg off. That's not what's happening. You're just standing here and your car won't start. You know, you're fine. Courage badge on. So now you're grounded in the situation. And then the next bead is relax. You got this. You can do this. You know, it may feel like you can't, and you really just want to run out of here and go get a latte and do something else, but that's not going to help you in any way. It's just going to postpone this moment to another time. So that next beat is just relax. You totally can do this. And then the last one, so I think that's it. Relax, you got this. Yes, relax, you got this. Now, after using the bracelet, you are in a mindset. You've got your courage badge on. You've deputized yourself with courage. And this also too helps to grow, because, you know, your courage muscle is something that it's almost like a muscle that you need to work. You need to work it a little bit and build that courage muscle up. And as you do that, you know, you become more and more capable of withstanding more and more fear, in essence. So you've got your courage badge on. You know that there's not a saber-toothed tiger. You've calmed your sympathetic nervous system, and you're out of panic. Then you're at the perfect place to look at that fear and deal with that. And as you start going through these fears, you'll find that you get better and better at it, because it gets to the point where you immediately know what's going on. Oh, wait, I'm okay. This is mine. And you start recognizing it. Oh, yeah, I know that one. I've been doing that one for a while. And you recognize that that situation is not about anything else but your fear. It's like, oh, that's mine. I need to own it. And you own it. It's yours. You haven't done anything wrong. You're not going to be punished for it. It's a learning. It's so you can learn. And that's what the first bracelet does. And I think that it works, a little better with the more intuitive, empathic mind. And then the logical, rational mind. I think that because I have several different bracelets that do different things. So that's that bracelet for that specific, reason of getting rid of the panic, calming you down, knowing, getting your courage badge on there and relaxing yourself so that you are calm enough to deal with the situation. Then for the rational person, they just need information. It's like, okay, wait a minute, this isn't what this appears to be. And, oh, I need to hit this with a logic stick. Wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have any reason to bother with it. I just need to know why I'm doing this. And so that's why I developed several different bracelets. But I'm, for right now, I think that the majority, I've seen a lot of this in people where, we just immediately go into panic and it's like, oh no, oh no. And then when we go into panic, it disconnects your frontal lobe from your limbic system, which is your, what it's called the amygdala. That's where the fear center is in the human mind, in the human brain. Well, your avatar brain. And so the amygdala, that thing gets clicked off so many times, it gets a hair trigger on it and it's just going off all the time. You're walking around in fight flight all day long. And that the bracelet turns your flight system off. And then that reconnects your brain back to your frontal cortex where you can bring in the logic and start thinking about what's actually happening right then. Because, when we go into fight flight, well, that's the first thing it does. It disconnects you from your frontal lobe so that you're getting primed and ready to run, fight, flight, or freeze. You become invisible. And if you look at a lot of people, it's usually either one or two. Either they come up swinging when they get real scared, or they take off running. I mean, look at some videos where people had something startle them. Watch them. They jump up and run off and just take off. Well, that they're not thinking, well, am I really in danger here? It's because they can't think about it because they are not in tune with the frontal lobes. They're not even using those at the time. They're just using the ancient brain of, okay, either it's going to eat me or I need to get out of here, one or the other. And that's another thing that I found too, is that, living out in nature, we had predators too. So this ancient system we have, well, it was to keep us safe. But what we're dealing with in this modern world is we've got things triggering this ancient system in us when it's not even a saber-toothed tiger or anything else. I noticed that my fight flight system was getting triggered by silly things like weed eaters, lawnmowers, and things like that, just that were just real noisy or anything like that. I think this ancient system it was great for keeping us out of the mouths of other hungry predators, but it's not really great when you're, just living in a city and something startles you. The purpose that it evolved to serve just doesn't work real well in that situation, because I tell you, I've never seen a weed eater come after and weed eat somebody to death. Not once. I'm sure they've gotten hurt by them somehow, but nothing is like, a predator coming to eat you. So that's why I think the bracelet works so well for me, is that it trained my mind to not immediately go into the fight flight system and take off running or check out in my imagination. It grounded me and said, wait a minute, we got to think. This is, hey, wait. And it just brings your awareness. It's almost a form of mindfulness. It's almost helps train your brain to be mindful in the situation that you're in so that you can see it for what it is. I can't tell you how many times I was in a situation where I'd have a fear around something. Then someone would trigger one of my fears. Then I would get mad at them. And then it would ruin my whole, mood and mindset for the rest of the day. And sometimes it could do it for weeks at a time. And then, I would say things like, well, I'm just not in a good mood. I'm not in a good mood. And it was just because, one of my fears got triggered, you know, from a comment made by someone who didn't even mean that in a negative way. But because I didn't have high self-esteem and I didn't have, all the tools I have now, well, I would want to go attack the other person. It's like, well, you did this to me when they, in fact, didn't do anything to me. That it was me doing it to myself. And that circles back to how we create our own suffering, because some people say things, it's not even about you. It's about them. They're talking about themselves. And so, over time, when you use the bracelet and you get to where you can just effectively just work through these fears, just, once you shake that first fear off, your first one is going to be the hardest to get rid of. Then once you get through your first fear, don't give up. It's your first one's the hardest. Then after that, now you know how to do it. Then your second one's not going to be as bad. Then your third one's going to be even easier. Then it gets to the point where you're just like shaking them off like fleas. And then all of this fear starts coming out of your being. Then, your whole reality changes so fast that it will make your head spin. People react to you differently because when you have that fear inside of you, other people can feel that. And when you walk up, they're like, oh, wait, I feel a vibration of fear. What do I need to be afraid of? Do we have a bear coming in? What's happening here? And then they get defensive too. And then it just adds to it and makes it bigger. So that's kind of what's going on. But when you walk into a group of people, it doesn't matter how much fear they have. If you've removed a lot of your fear, you walk into that situation with the other people who haven't removed their fears, they can go into fear. You can see what it is for what it is. It doesn't affect you. So see, you don't suffer anymore. It doesn't affect you that way. You're maintaining a high vibration of care about others, love, compassion, and cooperation. And so you can see that other person, then you can say, oh, I see you're upset. Is there anything I can do? Because you're not in fear yourself, and you're not going to attack them and make their situation worse. You can hold your vibration of love and kindness even in a terrible situation, and then that in turn is what helps everybody else. But if you just jump right in the fear pot with them, you're just adding to the fear, and it just gets bigger and makes the situation worse. So I'm going to stop there. What else do you think we should talk about? Is anybody?
That is excellent advice. Yeah. Bali was saying it always goes back to her narcissistic stepfather. And yeah, we all have these people in our lives that, gave us a lot of adversity, but that's also how we became who we are today. So it's kind of what we were talking about in the beginning, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I understand, the struggle around why do we have to suffer? I hated it too. And I understand suffering. I know suffering. My father got sick when I was 7 years old, and I was a daddy's girl, and he was the light of my life. My dad was fun. My dad did not have a lot of fear in himself. He had some, but he was kind to others. He treated people well. He had compassion for others, and he was nice to me. And he got sick when I was 7 years old, and I watched him suffer for the next 20 years because he struggled for his health, because he wanted to stay alive to make sure that his children were okay and that they got out into the world and they were doing well. He didn't want to leave here and not know. He wanted to be here so that he could help us. And he did help me. He was just sick as he could be. And I would call him and he'd say, well, what's going on? And I would tell him, and he'd say, well, why don't you come by the house? And I'd go by, and there he is, just not feeling good. And I knew it. And I said, oh, Dad, I don't want to worry you with nothing. He goes, oh, no, I don't mind. What's the matter? And then I would tell him, and then he would talk to me about it. And he would explain, and help me learn lessons. And so I know all about the whole suffering thing, because my dad wasn't a little bit sick. He was a lot sick, and it was bad, some of the things that I saw. happened to him. And I hated suffering in this realm. And it took me a while to work through all that and understand that things happen the way they happen because of what we're doing here. And that to get out of that suffering, we have to grow up and move through it and past it. And then I saw the suffering that I had around all of that, that I would, it may have taken me 2 or 3 more lives to get to where I am now, in a place of way less fear than I've ever had in this life. I don't know about any of the others. I don't know how much fear and stuff I had. I kind of know who I was, but I don't know the inner parts of it. So I thought about it. It's like, okay, would you rather have this situation, or would you like to have 4 more lifetimes of this until you get to, a place of understanding where you're not suffering anymore? Well, I thought, I think I would have rather have this hard one and then be able to move on out of that. So, as far as the whole, we suffer here and all that, it's a real tough thing to come to terms with. And I think we all have to do that in our own way. And yes, I've been around also narcissistic people in my life. And when I was younger, I did not appreciate them in any way. They do not make you feel good. They are inward focused. Everything is about them, which tells you right there, they have tons and tons of fear. That's why they're like that. When people have lots and lots of fear, everything is about them, because fear is inward focused, and it makes everything in this reality about you. You don't see that, well, that's the other separate person over there. That other person just becomes part of your drama, right? Or part of you're part of my problem, and you're the reason why all this is happening. And so when you come across a person like that who has tons and tons of fear, if you're the child of one of them, yes, it creates a situation where you have a lot to learn and grow from. But then it also, as you get older, it teaches you how to even have compassion for someone like that. Because when someone comes into somebody's life that has something that severe, to where they don't have much love in their being, they are in an inner struggle and an inner suffering that you cannot imagine. They feel so terribly that they have to attack everybody else to make themselves feel better. That's all they're trying to do. They're just trying to feel better. And they are suffering beyond belief. And they're already miserable. And if you watch someone who is considered a narcissist, I consider them as someone that is fear-based. Their whole self is evolving around fear. There's no love. There's no compassion. They don't give it. They don't give love, and they don't receive it either. They usually end up isolated because nobody wants to be around them, because they're negative. They're negative people because of the way they are and the way they feel. But that's who they are. That's where they are. And only they can get themselves out of that. And so I was able to turn the table around. And when I encounter someone that has this problem, I look at it and I go, wow, I bet that hurts. Oh, nobody wants to even be around you on Christmas. Everybody's running and don't even want to go to your house. How sad is that? It's very, very sad. It's like, oh, that's going to hurt. So, when I encounter them and they walk up to me and they're dripping fear, I look at them and I think things like this. I know you're suffering. I hope you learn the lesson so that you can get yourself out of the suffering. These are the things that I think internally. There's nothing I can do to get you out of it, because you have to get yourself out of it. And all I can do is you walk into the kitchen, Christmas Day, you're getting you a plate, and the narcissist walks in, gets a plate, and you're holding the spoon, and you look at him and go, oh, hi, would you like some potato salad too? And be kind to them and show them love. And this is really hard to do. I know it is, but it's one of the very few things that can help people that are in this very dark space. And it's hard to do because some of them have hurt us very much so, and it's difficult. But once you look past that veil a little bit and see, oh, this person is dripping in pain, you know, even though they're putting out a bravado, look how great I am. That's just the ego that's covering up what's underneath. Because if you look at their life, things aren't going well. Because when your being is 90% fear, things are not going to go well for you here. A lot of things happen to you. You know, they may be able to put a rose-colored glasses on and say everything's great, but if you really look deep into it, their world is falling apart around them, around their ankles. There's nothing they can do because they're really not in control of other people. They can manipulate, they can do things, but they cannot make that other person's choices for them. They do not have that power unless someone else gives them that power to do that. And there's that too. And so that's why, you know, as I was moving forward, I changed my outlook. And as I became more loving and I was able to care more for people because I was getting out of that, you know, fear that because I had it too. And I could have been considered a narcissist too, because I was horrible, because I was miserable and I was in a lot of pain. And I wanted to be seen as, oh, I want to be seen as this great person here. Well, I wasn't great. I was walking around with a lot of fear and I was making other people feel bad when they come around me. And so as I've improved myself and as I've worked on myself and I've gotten through some of these things and I can see it for what it is, it's like, oh, wait a minute. They may make it look great, but it is not great. They're not in a great place. That's not fun, because what all humans need is human connection. And when someone who is a narcissist, they don't make real connections with anyone, not even their children, because they can't. Because a connection with another person comes through love and caring. You cannot connect to another person out of fear. It's out. You're on the other end of the track there. And if you are in fear, you're not connecting to anybody in love, and you do not feel connected to anybody else. And we have a innate instinctual need for connection with others. We are a social animal in this avatar. We need connection with others. Number one, that very first relationship we come into this world with our mother. If you don't have that connection with your mother, well, and she didn't have it with you, well, she could end up leaving you on the side of the road, and not being your caregiver. See, we need that so that we can survive. It's a survival instinct to have connection with other people. And then as we get older and we become adults and we start learning more, then you find out, I learned the hard way, that we are only as strong in the inner world as our connection to others. We cannot evolve and grow. Yes, we can get rid of some of our fear, but we can't really hook into that fast track that we really can do here through our connections with others. Because then when we have this connection with a lot of other people around us, then you're getting a lot of different perspectives on the same thing. And then you can talk about it and say, oh, well, wait a minute. What if we're just feeling around on the different parts of the elephant and we're all right? What if that's happening here and we can't see it because I can only see things through my one perspective? So when you get, more and more connections with other people in your life, as you reduce your entropy, you increase your love, decrease your fear, you get more and more connections with other people, you have a bigger decision space where you can look at a situation and you can have 10 choices there instead of one. Like, I'm just going to get mad at this point right here. Instead, you can go, well, wait a minute. This person is coming from that place. That's why they're acting like that. Oh, so I can choose to not get mad at that person who's already suffering a lot. And I can go over to this realm and I can come over here, and out of caring, I can be kind to them. And it may be the first time someone has given them love and kindness and consideration in their lives. I've seen this too. Yeah, because when I met Tom Campbell, I was not a good person. I was not. I thought I was. And when I met Tom Campbell, he walked up to me. He didn't judge me because he didn't know me from Adam. I'm sure he could feel my vibe and that it wasn't good. But he approached me out of love and kindness. and made a connection there. And that was the first time I felt that deep love vibe coming from anyone. And it transformed my life. Just that one connection. So we can be that catalyst for each other in this place. And it's really hard not to be mad at people that act ugly. And you just really gotta put the ugly where it goes. It's not your ugly, that's their ugly, and they're in it. And so you don't have to, oh, well, they're saying that ugly thing about me and they're treating me in this ugly way. Well, it's you're not it. You're not whoever's being ugly, that's where the ugly is. And so you have to let people own their inner worlds and own their process, because we can't change anybody else. The only power we have is by planting seeds and being the change that we want to see. It's been said over and over and over again by the sages, because once we are the change that we want to see in the world, that's what changes the world. Because people look at your example, people look at how you treat other people, they can feel all of that. And once you start becoming a part of the solution instead of the part of the problem, then everything in your reality changes. And then that can help that person start stepping their way out of their own living hell. But you have to get to this place to where you see that for what it is, and that it's their problem and they're doing the ugly. And even if you did do something and it made somebody upset, then you can say, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I took it to be this way. And then the other person may say, oh, well, I just didn't understand what was happening here. For instance, this morning, I made a mistake. We were supposed to, start this at 8:30. And I had it in my head that I even wrote it down for 9 o'clock. It was a thought I had, but I didn't write down the right time. So then I came to Julia. Oh, I'm sorry, Julia. I misunderstood. I thought we were starting at 9, not 8:30. And then Julie went, oh, it's okay. See, I explained to her what just happened there. Julie's not mad at me. She doesn't think less of me as a person because of that. Because I could say, oh, whoops, I did this. And I didn't have to say, oh, I'm not worthy. Oh no, she's not going to like me anymore. She's never going to talk to me again. I didn't have to go there. But had I been in low self-esteem and I feel bad about myself, then I could have, well, Julia, we were supposed to start at 9 o'clock. And then if I went at her in a negative way, then she would have went, I don't want to work with a negative person, really, not really. So yeah, this is great. We'll do this talk and we won't be doing any more. Right. So that's just, examples of what thinking in these ways can do to your life and all the other people around you. I did have, I had a lot of those negativity problems. I didn't have children, so I didn't teach anybody any lessons by being a narcissist to them. I had other lessons in other ways. But one of my sisters has always been in a very dark place. And when I came back into the family, because I didn't speak to anybody for 10 years. And then when I came back into the family, because I had changed myself, and then it changed my perspective on how I saw them as dripping sorrow and sadness and all of that stuff. I started approaching my sister in that way, and it changed her. I'm not saying I changed her. I was just the example. And then one day she called me and she said this, I'm in my apartment. Nobody ever comes to see me. Nobody wants to come see me. I don't like people. I'm just negative. I'm like, yes, I've been there, Donna. Yep. And the more you don't like people and the more mean you are to them, guess what? The less of them that'll come around you. I said, so, as far as how it really, really, really does matter how we treat others. And I think that it has one of the biggest charges here, how we treat other people, not just in general, in every single interaction that we have with other people. It really matters how we treat others. And if we are not being kind, and if we are being ugly to other people, and if we're doing these things, There, from my experience and what I've experienced here, there are huge repercussions for that. I think it's one of the things here that we get the biggest lesson from is when we treat other people badly. So I saw in my sister's life, she never treated anybody well, and she was always mean to everybody around her. And her life was a complete disaster, every which way you could imagine. It was just a complete disaster. And I think that's just the consequences of when you treat people ugly and when we're not nice and kind and helpful and loving and passionate. I think that this is a big, it's a spiritual law in this realm. I do believe that, in this reality, there are spiritual laws, like the law of reflection, that, what you put out there, you get back. Then I think there's this other law and consequences around, a lot of consequences around how you treat people. Because, by not having walked a million miles in someone else's shoes, you could walk up to a situation where the person wasn't being very nice, and you've never met that person before, and they walk up and they say, well, just give me your ticket, and they're just really mean to you, and you launch back at them, right? Well, you don't know. You haven't walked a mile in their shoes. What if one of their children was killed 3 months ago? What if their spouse just died? What if they're in this situation where they just can't get themselves out of it? What if? We don't know. And that's why I think that this has a lot of lessons around it, because it really does matter how we treat other people and be that example, because we can change somebody's life just in a few interactions. And without those interactions coming in, those people have little to no ability to change, because they just don't understand they're doing it until, someone comes and shows them, reaches their hand out, okay, yeah, you're a miserable human being, but here's just some potato salad, maybe you're going to, figure this out someday. Maybe I can be kind to you so that, you can learn to understand that this is a lot of these things that are happening to you, you're doing it to yourself. To me, it always reminds me of the Christmas story about the Grinch. He was that way because his heart was 2 sizes too small. He goes into the little village of Whoville, and there they are, these cute little Whovilles that just really liked each other, and it was a little community of caring, of connection, of love, of kindness, and caring about others. To me, it was a low entropy town, right? And so here comes this Grinch in. He went and stole all their presents. And afterwards, did the little Whoville town get on their horses and get their axes and everything to go chop up the Grinch who stole all their stuff so they go get it back? No, they didn't do that. They didn't hate the Grinch. They all got in a big circle and started singing and loving each other. And I love that song in the end, how they're singing and they're holding hands and they're still happy. And then the Grinch, he got away from the town and he hears them singing this beautiful song, and he's sitting there and he had to sit there in his thing, and he felt terrible. And then his heart grew because the other people did not add to his misery and fuel that fire, because they were the example that he needed so that his heart could grow those 2 more spaces so he could become a better Grinch. And it's just I think it's a beautiful story. What do you think about all this mess, Julia?
You are on a roll, girlfriend. You have so much good things to share and such good advice, because that is such a tricky one to these mean people, to be nice to them.
It's
but
so...
it really does make a difference. And you just have to make sure you keep your distance and your boundaries, but you can still make nice gestures,
Right. And
really
right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, really good advice on that one.
Yeah. And yeah, when you're dealing with this, when you're dealing with I just say, well, they just got the dark uglies, and when you're dealing with someone who has the dark uglies, you do have to have boundaries. You don't want to go, on a 2-week skiing trip with them, because that's not going to be fun. It's not going to, it's going to be difficult. Now, if you really want to work with the person, you want to help them, well, yeah, you could. That's if you're strong enough to hold your high vibe through that whole entire time, you could do that. But, you want to have good boundaries, and you don't want to just, you don't want to move into a house with, 8 people that are like this, just because you can, it doesn't mean you have to avoid them. But it also, you would want to have some boundaries around yourself so that, you don't get pulled down into that yourself, because, other people's vibrations can affect us, and we do feel that stuff. So to keep yourself at that higher vibe, you need to do what you need to do to maintain that loving vibe, to maintain the kindness and maintain that vibration. And if you feel yourself slipping because you've, been involved with some of that, well, you need to step away and go have a meditation with the tea. And, you need to recenter and get yourself back to where you need to be, to be an effective, to be the change you want to see in the world. And you're right, Julie. I'm glad that you brought up that point about, how we really need to be aware of the situation and understand that, it's okay for you to protect yourself, because, people that do have the dark uglies, you get a bunch of them in a group, they make a big vibe, and it can affect you. I noticed that happening when, we had a lot of fear happen, and I'd gone to the grocery store, and that's all that was in there was just fear. And I walked through the front door and I could feel it. And so after that, I didn't go to the grocery store anymore. I had my groceries delivered so that I didn't have to be exposed to that big of a negative vibe. It was too much. And it was very disorienting for me. There wasn't anything I could do about the situation. The situation was what it was, but that's what I could do, is remove myself from that very negative situation so that I could maintain a better vibration. I didn't have a good vibe through the whole 3 years. I didn't. It took me a little while to work through, because nobody knew what was going on, me included. So I had to work through that. And I did get to a better place of understanding, and was able to maneuver through that a little bit better, and flow through it instead of getting caught up in it and running around with my hair on fire, because that wasn't helping me or anybody else. So, and I wanted to, try to be helpful, and this wasn't much I could do. So I just removed myself from the situation and waited for things to kind of clear up a little bit and get better. And
Right. And if you have to be in that kind of situation, you just have to really have the intention to radiate love and not absorb anything. Just be radiating love. And that's what, fear needs, right? It's the opposite.
yes,
And that's
yes,
something that Eileen, my biofield tuning mentor, says that she has to do, because she's a super, super empath. And she can just stand next to someone that's had something go on and really feel it. So, she just got into this whole process of always radiating love. And of course, that's what we all want to do anyway, eventually get to that point where it doesn't have to be an intention. It's just who we are. And then we
yes,
probably won't even really notice that thing other than just seeing the pain of it.
yes, yes. That's funny that, you mentioned Eileen and the biotuning. I almost was in one of her classes. Things didn't work out, but I did get all of the tuning forks from her. It's really interesting. I did use the tuning forks when I was working on my vibration.
That's just crazy. Yeah, so many people she's not that popular, so it's really interesting that you resonated with her as well.
Yes.
And actually, somebody that's visiting here right now, she showed up with her sonic slider tuning fork. So yeah, I see so many synchronicities like that. The like-minded, like-hearted, like vibrational. We're all finding each other. We're finding our high vibe tribe, like I said. And
Yes.
it's so cool. I'm
it
really
is
enjoying
really
this.
cool.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this intentional community and putting it together, because normally someone my age, it's time to retire, and just sit in their rocking chair and watch the rest of these days pass by. And I'm just embarking on a whole new adventure here. And so far, so good. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And I encourage other people to do that kind of thing if they don't want to stay in the matrix. There
Oh,
are
yeah.
alternatives, and in today's world, we can all contact each other worldwide. But as far as Cheryl's bracelet goes, I already put her email in the chat, and I'll put it in the description. And you can send her an email. And I guess you ask them some questions, right? As far as which bracelet you're going to send. And then she sends instructions with the bracelets too. So it's all there. It's a very organized process. It's technology, right?
Yes, it is a technology. Yes. And it was the only thing because I'm a super empath. So it was the only thing that helped me stay in my body while I was dealing with stuff because I was just so good at switching data streams, as Tom calls it. I was so good at it that I could switch my data stream right out of that fear place. And I was not effective. I could not get anything done there. But well, what's really interesting too about you said that you should be retiring. Well, I think we're really close to the same age too. And what I've been coming to understand is that if your vibration is this love vibration, it affects your physicality too. And it kind of makes age just being a number, and you look at what we do in this world, and I think that what's expected is, well, it's time for you to retire and time for you to go do this. And I think that's the matrix talking. I think that our best time is the age we are because we've come to some understandings around things because we've been in this matrix for so long. We've seen the patterns so many times that finally what you're looking at. And because consciousness, we are a very complex, physicists and all the scientists of the whole world, they still can't figure out what consciousness is. That's how complex it is. So that means that what we're doing here is a very complex thing. And, it takes a long time to learn some of these basic principles, to learn the spiritual laws, to learn what we're doing here, what's our place in it, what do we need to do to change the things and all of that. And I believe once you start getting closer to 60, you kind of get what's happening. And then that's when you're at the age where you can take your experiences, you can be vulnerable, tell people, this is what I experienced, and then they can take that information and help themselves with it, where they don't have to go through all the exact same things that you had to go through to get to 60 to, get yourself in a better place. They can take that information and go, oh, I can take this information and I can step myself out of this thing. That's really helpful. Just like I had someone that helped me step myself out of where I was, that came
Right.
into my life.
And most people wait till they're older, 50 or 60. And, they're just at that point, like you said, they're sick and tired of waking up sick and tired. And you don't have to get to that point. You can take these processes, language lessons of heart, and what's the name of your process? You're gonna have to come up with a name for it. Fear removal bracelet process.
I've always just called it fear work. It's just fear work because it is work, and that was one thing I wanted to say too. The fear work, it's going to make you uncomfortable. And what I finally got to is like, okay, I'm just going to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, that this is just part of it. And that this uncomfortable feeling has a beginning, a middle, and an end. This too shall pass. This is not how I'm always going to feel. This is just how I feel right now. But I need to feel like this so that I can deal with this. I need to feel this so that I can step myself out of this place. And I think that was, one of the things is like we have a propensity to go toward pleasure and away from discomfort within our beings. But in this fear work, that's what I call it, fear work, you have to be okay with feeling uncomfortable from time to time. It's that same thing. We have discomfort before we learn lessons and we don't have it anymore. And it's the same thing with this process. It will make you uncomfortable. But here's the thing. You're already uncomfortable anyway, just in other ways. So you're already uncomfortable. You're already sick and tired of being sick and tired. And, this is a way you can get out of all that. Yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable because you're going to sit there and you're going to feel your fear and you're going to go, oh, well, wait, I can have courage badge. I can have courage in the face of fear. But this has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this is not permanent. This feeling is going to go away. There were several days during my process of, healing myself and getting past these fears where I didn't feel good. And I just sat there with my little cup of tea and I said, you know what? I don't feel good, but I feel the way I do. And I'm going to let myself feel this way. This is how I feel. No, I didn't go out and go around a bunch of people like that, because that would have just flowed right onto them and it didn't feel good. I just would kind of keep to myself a little bit when I could, or, just limit my exposure around other people until the ending of that, uncomfortableness. And because it does pass, you have the beginning, you feel it, you put your courage badge on, then it has a middle, you don't feel good, and you got to just feel the way you do. You're not going, it doesn't kill you. I'm still sitting here, I didn't die, and it doesn't feel good. Then it has an ending. Then you start feeling better. And then after you work through a couple of fears, you would not believe the amazing, it's almost like bliss, the amazing feeling that you get when you actually work through a fear and you did, because it feels better. That fear around that is gone. I mean, it feels way good and it feels way better than being uncomfortable. And that feeling persists from the time you work through that fear forward. You get to feel good around the situation instead of bad. And so this work to me has been totally worth it, because I do not walk around every day feeling bad anymore. When I did for the first 50 years of my life, I never felt good. I was in a pickle and I didn't like it. And so, it's all of it. You gotta, you've got to accept feeling uncomfortable for a little while you're dealing with getting rid of your fears. But just know and understand there's a beginning and a middle and an end. And you just sit there, I don't feel real good, but I'm going to feel better soon. And this too shall pass. And you just, try to soothe and comfort yourself when you're working through it. I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this to help the people that are around me. Because when I'm in all this fear, they can feel that, and it can't feel good to them either. It doesn't feel good to me. So I'm going to do this for a reason. It's to help me grow and evolve. And it's also going to help everybody around me feel better. So I'm going to sit here with this ick vibe. I'm going to sip my tea and know that I belong here and I'm doing the work I need to do, so I can feel good about myself. I'm doing what I need to do here. And then you just keep stepping forward and stepping forward. And as you work through these fears, your vibration starts lifting. And once it really starts lifting quite a bit, it almost feels like you've been drinking sunshine all day. It's such a good vibe. And when you go out into the world carrying that vibe with you, it becomes this funny circus and everybody gets to having fun, because everybody loves love. They love the way love feels, because it is, I think more of, what the state we're supposed to be in. It's in a more of a natural state for us. And so it just feels like coming home. And you go through the grocery store line. Well, then something funny happens, the little kid in front of you, picks up something off the rack and throws it at you, or you look down, a little kid has walked up and wrapped their arm around your leg because they thought you were their mom, just all these little things start happening. And it's the cutest. So there is so many good things that come from this work. The uncomfortableness of it, I don't want to say surprises, the gifts you get after you do this work way outweighs that uncomfortable place you had to be in for little pieces of time as you work through this stuff. And the
reward for doing the work. Yeah. So fear work is the key to, getting your vibration raised and start having that content life. So yeah, if you want a bracelet, send Cheryl an email. And I already put her email in the chat, and I'll put it in the description. And everybody in the chat was awesome. Thank you guys. I just kind of read it quick. I was trying to focus on what Cheryl was saying instead of chatting in the chat. I noticed when I do that on Archaics, I have to definitely listen again. I was like, I didn't realize he said that. You know, I was there at the live, but yeah,
Yeah.
Cheryl, thanks so much. And Cheryl and I are also going to do a breakdown of archaics and Tom Campbell's My Big Theory of Everything, My Big Toe, and a little bit of Howie, what's his name in there? Mr. Soul
I
Trap
think
dude.
it's Howdy something.
Howdy.
Yeah, it's the
Mix,
Soul
mix.
Trap. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
getting
kind of
kind of
discussed
popular.
that whole soul trap notion, and it's just another fear porn technique as far as I'm concerned. And the thing is, it
Well,
is perspective. If you believe this realm is a hell, then that's what you're going to get mirrored to you. So you really
yes.
have to change your perspective, and I guess you could call it a belief too. But it's not that unless you think it's that. You know, I always say if you believe it, then it's true, and that's one of those
Right,
things.
right. Well, where I went with it, I went, oh, well, on the Soul Trap material, it's almost like, okay, that's the ultimate victim, like, right? It's the ultimate victimhood where I'm at. There's something here that's trying to hurt me, you know. It's like the ultimate victim. You know, you're not only is your avatar a victim, but your whole soul is a victim of the whole thing. So to me, it was like, well, that's the ultimate victim. That takes away all your power to affect this reality that you're in, that you have complete power to affect. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I can't get outside of the system and look, but just from my experiences and what I've done here, that, you know, to me, that would be going back into a victim mentality, which is not good for us because we affect this medium here, you know. And anything that says, oh, well, we're a victim of this whole thing, you know, oh, and when you die, you gotta, there's some aliens that are going to be there that are going to trick you into doing something. And it's like,
Don't go to
well,
the light.
yeah, don't go to the light. Well, what if you make a wrong turn? You have to, you know, but I don't think that we're, you know, victims. I think that we plan our lives just the way they are so that we can, this is a fast track. We wouldn't want to come here and do it slow. We came here for a specific specific reason, so that we could come here and grow and get past this piece so that we can move on and become, you know, the change that we want to see here. Well, this is how you do it. That's why we're here. We're here doing it. And if it was
The
all
best
perfect,
place to be the best place to start to be the change you want to happen in the world is to lose your fear, right? And clear out
exactly.
all those negative beliefs about yourself, like you're not good enough, and get that vibration raised, and that helps the world more than anything else. And of course, worrying about and fretting over every little thing, and then, you know, all those things that we've talked about in this discussion. You just always have to focus on what you want, like I say every time I do a video. So, and we
Exactly.
will go
Yes.
ahead and stop here because I have another Zoom in 13 minutes.
Okay. Right quick. Right quick.
So,
There's
yes.
one tiny little glitch. If anybody wants a calming bracelet, there's no charge. I will send you the bracelet, but in the email, you need to include your address and you need to measure the circumference of your wrist. They are made to your size because you don't want it slipping off when you're in the middle of a fear trying to deal with stuff. So just include the circumference of your wrist size and your address, and I will get those out to you ASAP. And have a happy holidays, everybody. And I really love doing this with Julia. I think that it's so positive and wonderful. And I appreciate everybody in the chat. And you know, if anybody needs a bracelet, just let us know. And thank
Do
you.
they need to tell you if they're right brained or left brained?
Yes. Well,
So
not right now.
if you're more, okay.
We can bring that in later. The people that want the bracelet, more causes than not, they're going to
Left
be a right
brain.
brainer. They wouldn't be here listening to this.
All right. So there
All
you go.
right.
And if it doesn't work, I guess you can get another one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks everybody for being here, and have a great morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. And remember to stay focused on what you want, help others if you can, and